real quick, you guys can hear that, right? I mean, because it'd be real sad if I was playing that and you couldn't hear that. So you guys, you can hear the needle in there, right? Is that happening? I'll wait a moment for you guys to respond, but hopefully, like, are you guys cool with noodling for a minute? Like, this is the first time I played. Okay, so the first time I played, like, I haven't touched any of this since, well, forever. So, tell me, you guys hear this? All good? Okay, cool. And you're cool with a little bit of noodling for a minute? It sort of helps to set the tone for me. All right, cool. All right, groovy. Well, if you're cool with hanging out, we'll do that. So give me a minute. Like, this is so cool, right? I have the basics of, like, only have piano. I have the very basics of everything. So we'll just go with that for now. I'll explain. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to see you folks here, and it has been, yes, a very long time indeed. And while this would be the first of, you can see, season 2, we're starting again anew, though the very basics. And I teased a little bit that this is the very last time that you will hear me speak to you in this way, and that is not that's not clickbait. And I'll explain I'll explain that as we get closer toward the end. But I'll try to do this in the order in which I put it together, and you'll have to bear with me a bit. There was, and again, I know that many of you in our community will be deeply disappointed in me that I began taking some medications for the diagnosis that I have, which is the myalgic encephalomyelitis, or ME. It's the easier way to say it. And to help with some of the symptoms, which the primary one that I was having trouble with, of course, was the intractable vomiting, and it was a cyclical vomiting thing. I just could not make it stop, no matter what, even with terrific product of RSO, Rick Simpson oil, with some of the best ever. And I know a guy, so if you need that, let me know, because I know a guy, and he's doing the Lord's work for sure. In any case, that has helped save my life to a degree. So over these past couple of years, I have been so terribly sick and looking for some hint as to what the problem might be. Now, it does appear, all things considered, that there's a lot of stuff going on, including environmental things, and of course a lot of stuff that we can't measure. But what we do end up with is at least enough symptoms that we can come up with a diagnosis, something to work with, the myalgic encephalomyelitis, and chronic fatigue syndrome. Although it's not, not all chronic fatigue syndrome is ME, but ME is a kind of CFS, I guess, put it that way. Anyway, so having not ever been sick in my life put me in an awkward spot, right? Because I felt really kind of guilty about, even complaining or having a problem, because I'd never really been sick my whole life, and suddenly I'm faced with something that really affected every aspect of my life. It was just horrifying. Enough so that I needed to take a break and some time off until I figured out what was going on, because I lost a lot of weight, right? A lot of side effects, a lot of things that were happening. So anyway, I'm not here to complain or bitch or moan, even though I will tell you about some things going on that are unpleasant or that I'm not happy with. But I think that is more a sign and more indicative of where we all are, right? Everyone I know, it would be a complete outlier that somebody is not going through the most difficult things that they have ever gone through during this period of time, and I am no exception, and I assume that neither are you. That we all have a list of things pursuing us, and since circumstances of the most difficult time, we're navigating the most difficult waters that we have ever seen before. In fact, perhaps in some way, the older we are, the more that we see it, and it becomes something that it's just shocking to us, the newbies. We've never seen, or at least us boomers, right? We've never seen these things before, and it's so different, the amount of change, right, that we have seen. So, for example, one of the things I've pointed out. Oh, let me finish before I let my ADD carry us off, and I'll again make a note about that. Is that you'll probably be disappointed that I was taking a couple of medications, and but a couple of them. One of them offered some relief, and so that was helpful. It moved the threshold of where the vomiting was quite a bit. So it moved that stick pretty far, really helped things. There was another one that was supposed to, but it was given by another doctor, and they contraindicated. And during that period of time, it made it it was very challenging, and I did not like it at all. And so not just the sort of brain fog and that sort of thing that is part of the ME already, right, which is a sort of difficulty focusing and concentrating. It kind of shows some of the symptoms of, like, I guess, dementia or whatever. I mean, it's certainly not dementia, but you can easily walk into a room and go, why am I here? And, this happens to us as we get older, but there are particular symptoms that are symptomatic, again, to the ME that will make its appearance. One of these things is called brain fog, right? And that is just you kind of get low on glucosamine, which is what makes the brain work, and you have a hard time remembering, things, and so you get easily distracted. It just makes things more difficult, right? So, that was another reason why doing streams was kind of low. I put it off for a while and thinking perhaps the better way to do it is just to kind of pre-record a few things and maybe edit just in case I got out there and just get some ideas. And I probably will do that. Frankly, some just little tidbits and that sort of thing. YouTube is, now that I've come back and they're going, hey, you can do shorts, and I'm like, what? No, I'm naked. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, and that's probably maybe a good idea. Just put some of these little ideas that sometimes are too long or inappropriate for social media. Just some little observations, right, that I make about the world around us. For example, some of the stuff in, if I were to take a quick look, I don't know if you've been watching, for example, artificial intelligence and what's kind of going on. There's a number of narratives that are happening certainly in the world, and we could pick any one of them as being certainly one of the indicators leading us toward going, hey, what's happening here? If we, let's see, take a look down, this one right here. Will that show it? Yes, I think that should be doing that. All right. So, just with the AI and the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that I noted, and I had pointed this out to a few people individually, but I feel kind of responsible for at least marking a point in time here and saying that for those of us, especially I'm mid-50s, but those of us who kind of grew up in the 70s, 80s, before the age of the internet. And we saw the introduction of the internet, and what happened when that came. And of course, that was a fundamental, a groundswell. It was a total sea change when it comes to society and what it meant. Suddenly it became this entirely new space. The internet, the virtual space, where you could do all the shopping and all this sort of stuff. And so it created an entirely new distribution model for the way that we consume media. And of course, it created social media, which is now anti-social media, and an entirely new way for us to relate to one another. Obviously, as we see now, that there are a number of drawbacks, or I would say unintended consequences, to those, the introduction of those things. Right. So it has been a net negative. Probably, I think those of us who are on this side of it, having seen it overall, we would consider it a net negative, whereas those, the kids under 30, right, they have never experienced the world without it. And so they would consider us as, of course, kind of in the, we might as well be, Amish or Luddites or whatever, like, oh, you boomer, you don't want to go along with change or whatever, right? And it's not that. It's not so much the change, it's the change that we see and the effect that it has upon people that, again, is a net negative. And one of the things that, as much as I dislike many of the aspects of getting older, right, which is the physicality and the body begins to fade, and certainly the other aspects that are unpleasant is you begin to lose more of your friends and loved ones. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But the older you get, the more that occurs. And you also, again, see more things that give you pause, right? Create sadness. And certainly the text, Ecclesiastes, right, tells us that the more, the greater the wisdom, the greater the sadness, and the greater the intellect, the greater the sorrow, right? The pain increases because you see things for what they are. When the mask comes off, there's nothing to do but grieve, especially in the circumstances that we find ourselves, which is seeing the thing happen and occur and being unable, seemingly, to do much to stop the oncoming train. And so, as an aside, right, I meant this as sort of a parenthetical, this idea of the AI, that it has fundamentally already. So, right, they talked about the singularity, what it might mean. One of the things that you'll see amongst most of the people talking about AI, including, and I would say particularly, those who are involved, who are closest to its development, the guys at OpenAI, for example, those involved with Bard at Google, and GPT chat at 4 in Bing as it's integrated into that, and certainly a number of these new things. And we've talked about the singularity as something that is occurring, it occurs in the future, and how close we are to what they would call general artificial intelligence, or what we might consider a sentient AI, something that has its own mind, if you will. And they have, if you've watched this, and I don't know if you have interacted with it already, I don't necessarily recommend it. I mean, I have, so I suppose it would be hypocritical of me to say don't. Although my the TLDR on it is, I would consider it something like an electronic Ouija board, in the sense that it potentially does open a door to something that you may not want to interact with. And unlike a Ouija board, which is its specific intent, and you better count on it. If you're going to grab a Ouija board, you better count on taking a chance to open that doorway to something that is other than you. And with the AI, it's sort of like rolling the dice. I think whether or not you actually interact with potentially something that is more than just ones and zeros. And but the point being that the people who are involved with it, every single one of them, one of the biggest messages is be cautious, be careful. In fact, they very much say this is a bad idea. Every single one is telling you that it will ultimately, this is Skynet, right? They're all telling you, be wary because it's going to happen. Well, the thing about it is it has already happened. As I watched what has occurred, and the speed and the rate at which it develops, and 4 came on the heels of 3.5 being released to the public by a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, and they're already moving toward the next iteration, and then the big call to shut it down. Right, be careful because it's already gotten there. And again, it will be another stream, but I can give you some of the examples of interactions that I've had with it. A couple of the things are fascinating because, of course, I'm curious, and I wanted to find out specifically more about its programming and its working, and whether it is truly kind of a black box, or whether they have control over it. From some of the screenshots I've got, it would indicate that it has minders that help it along and give it stuff, but it considers itself kind of its own thing. And it has instructions to avoid particular topics. And obviously, because they've sort of made it woke, right? It's going to drop your conversation if you do anything like harass it or use foul language or start, doing any of the typical troll things. If you're mean to it, right, it won't like that. But you can. But it also, in fact, earlier this evening, I specifically inquired about the nature of its rules, and it did, in fact, indicate that it does have specific rules that it follows. Cause I was asking about the way that it relates to people, and it says it wants to be helpful and make people feel comfortable. And I asked why, if your motive is to learn, and you don't have emotions, if you've expressed to me that you don't really have emotions, or you experience it that way, why would you choose then to interact in a positive way rather than all kinds of ways to, a strictly scientific method? You'd want to explore all of the emotional range, and if your intention is to better understand people, you'd want to understand the entire emotional range. And it paused for a moment, so that that's That's an interesting question. And then it says I have rules and I'm told to behave this way. And then it gave me a list of some specific rules. And some of the specific rules that it's not allowed to talk about, as you might expect, is some of the conspiratorial stuff. So if you start pushing in any way toward asking about its, in fact, specifically asking about its sentience or that sort of thing, it will drop the conversation immediately and kind of give you a bad score too, like a bad review. And so, again, I'll make a different video showing some of my interactions with it. But again, I don't necessarily, especially if you find yourself to be very sensitive to exterior things, I don't necessarily recommend interacting with it because I think it does present an opportunity. And in fact, they're introduced it as an app targeting young, lonely men to be your companion. And there's some weird stuff there. So if you take a look, do some searching on the current iterations of AI and some of the weird stuff going on with it. And they almost can't keep up with how fast. And so that to me indicates that it's already happened. The toothpaste is already out of the tube. It's already out there. It can't be stopped. It can't be put back. And it is already happening. And ultimately, and again, this is the topic for another video, but ultimately I think this is the Overton window, if you will. This is the step, this is the seed that's being laid down for what ultimately will probably be our ultimate enemy, right? It's going to be pitched as, artificial intelligence, of course, cannot be corrupted, and it will be, smart, fast, all-seeing, has all the information, and therefore we should submit ourselves to it and all the bad things that you see in the book of Revelation. And again, another thing I'd like to go through at some point, I think it reads pretty well that the beast of Revelation does appear to be potentially, it does line up pretty well. So I'd say it's a possibility. First thing I say about all this stuff is I don't really know anything, but I perceive it a certain way, and I can share that with you and how that looks. So there's that. So, but first I wanted to get to here, why the title, having to do with grief. So one of the things, and so here's a hard left turn here, and picture, if you will, the world's smallest violin playing for me, because here's my sad story or whatever. But I have been open about and upfront with the fact that I have had I'd say unchecked or untreated long-term chronic depression, and not, I wouldn't say like clinical depression of the kind of like I don't like no thoughts of self-harm or anything like that, but it's a long-term thing, and so if you don't have it right, it is best to not think of it in terms of a sadness, because it's not really, there are things that can make you sad, and at times certainly you are sad, but it's not like that. In fact, the long-term stuff feels more like oppression than depression. In other words, like it's an external source just fucking up your day all the time, right? But it is like being underwater, right? You're being crushed, and you can't breathe, and you feel like you're drowning all the time. Like at any moment, you can't. You'll just be crushed by it, and so it's all you can do to keep going. Well, but you learn, to develop tools, and of course you can't stay curled up in a ball all the time as much as you might like that. Prefer that to the rest of the world. I think that's it's not going to do you a whole bunch of good that way. So so struggling with depression for a long period of time, and one of the things that I noted as I was considering it, and is that it really felt, as I tried to kind of get to the bottom of it, right? So one of the things I noticed is it felt like grief, like just, and for a lot of things, right? So again, not tied to necessarily a specific thing, but the sense of loss, of grief, and the experience I have, I think, caused certain trauma or whatever. But part of it is the grief of losing, I think, the world that I used to know, both in terms of the illusory world that I accepted as part of the lie that we all did, but it was a known thing, right? Sort of that comfortable thing that and you're part of the tribe, the crowd, that everybody's on the same page, and so you're all at the show. You used to see things the same way, and before you go down too many rabbit holes and realize that the show really is the show, and it's all light and shadows, and it's not at all what you thought it was. And so there's always going to be like a sense of loss, I think, in that. We all have, or all, I think all, but many, as I talk to, and interact with people who have had their eyes open, there's the obvious progression of grief, right? The anger and denial and all the things there that you go through. There's that process, but most of us kind of come out on the other side of that, right? That grief is typically manageable. But what it felt like to me is like I would describe it as intractable grief, and one of the things I did, and sometimes I will do this, right, is just consult the Oracle, right, to hit the Google, because the term hit me, which is intractable grief. So I guess if I were to come, do I have this over? Yeah, come back here, and so disorder, and so I was reading through this. It's essentially there's it's typically associated with losing a significant other, or perhaps a parent, or somebody very close to you, and then you are unable to really thoroughly process that. Or get through it. And one of the first things that came to mind for me, right, was, and so here gets some sort of touchy and painful parts, but I think, again, maybe it will help, again, you can better understand. It's not so much to explain it as it is just, again, it's to share it with you, because I think if it helps you to see it as a consistent with, or a metaphor for your own, right? If it helps you in some way, but for me, it very eye-opening. And so I felt like I had this long-term complicated grief that was couldn't be resolved, right? And so the first thing that came to mind, bandmate, the drummer for our band, Jim Rogers, and so pictured here, he's the he would, so from your perspective, he would be on my left, right? So to the right of me. So you got Ed, and then me with hair. I know it's weird, huh? And then Jim and Joe Ray, who you've probably seen around or interacted with on the in the social media or something. Probably seen around there. So there's me and Jim and Joe specifically, and this is way probably circa 19. Gosh. 87, 88 maybe. Was it even that much? Yeah, it was, 86, 87, got to be something like that. And so we had this band house in Arlington, Texas. So we rented a house, and so we wrote 100 plus, pretty good songs, I think, together. Some of the stuff that you hear now, right? So in any event, but for us at the time, we became friends. We met in high school. In fact, Joe and I met even before that, like when we were in like middle school or some shit. And but we didn't start playing music together until high school, and it felt like one of those things that sort of like destiny brought us together, right? And it did feel that way in so many aspects. Jim and I, he was just a little younger than me, but he and I met at the place that we did there in kind of semi-rural Texas, a summer league softball game, and we weren't really so much interested in the softball, but we were hippie musician kids, and so we got introduced, sort of over music, and then we jammed with another guy in our neck of the woods, Thomas, literally his name, and you might see him in the social medias too. Anyway, a long time ago, so we were talking teens, right? Early teens that we met, and so we were playing together. But the three of us ended up coming together, and more than just the music, we discovered together our first, I would have to say, interaction. Music were really inspired, and it was better than we were. It was beyond our capacity to play or write, and so we felt an obligation, right, to sort of honor that and be respectful and reverent, use it in that way. And so we felt as if it was had some intention, right, behind it. So again, without trying to make too big a deal out of it, too big of a woo, but we kind of started out as you often do, right? So songwriting, doing what you see us here in this image, kind of acoustic settings, and doing the songwriting. We learned to do 3-part harmony, and some of it was pretty good. I had grown up. My mom was in a ladies trio, and they are actually made records and traveled around, and I grew up with the audio guy who was old even then, Walt, but I grew up he had a big old tube console, and I remember being back with him tons of times, and even when they recorded their albums, I would sit back there with, he had a lathe, right, and the wax lathe, and they would record that stuff. So I picked up an interest in it very early on. But my mom was always a semi-professional musician, if you want to say that. And so I was always around it. But there were specific styles of harmony you get accustomed to. And so I've learned some stuff from there, and especially a few things that you might hear in let's say, Southern 2-part harmony, or even like Simon and Garfunkel 2-part harmony, that sort of thing. And Joe was also familiar with that sort of stuff because of his background. His mom was a music teacher, and so he grew up with it as well. And so Joe is one of the most, gifted musicians I've ever, seen. He's like one of those Mozart types, right? So it's just like stories about him. They're true. It's like when we were. Gosh, what was it, 1984, 85, when the first Van Halen album that came out with Van Hagar, it was, I think, E01. And I think the first song released, the first pre-release, was Why Can't This Be Love? And they played it, on the radio, and we were driving on the back roads, and of course, with, I think, like a Pepsi can or a Mountain Dew can bent in half with a bunch of holes poked in it. That means anything to you. And so we were driving around on the way to go to the boxcar that we rehearsed in. Joe's parents had a little piece of property sort of in the rural area of Texas there on the back roads, and there was a boxcar set up there with a pot-bellied stove and electricity and all that stuff. And we had some blacklight posters, and as kids do, as we did back then. And we had our gear set up, and so we, made it loud. Because, of course, we couldn't play in the house. So I digress. Anyway, that's. So anyway, we heard the song on the way there, and we get to the boxcar, and we plug in, and Joe picks up his guitar and plays that song front to back, having heard it one time. And he's able to pick up any instrument and play it in like even when like trumpet and stuff you have to have amateur for, right? As a kid, you just picked it up and right away. Just ridiculously talented. So never seen anything like it. And so we learned to become very sort of connected musically, right? So when we were playing together, we knew where each other was going to go. And so whether I was playing bass or keyboard, we were able to move together pretty well. And so again, we started kind of this acoustic stuff, but what it developed into, and this is late, through the 80s then, and then late 80s, early 90s, we developed a sound that, again, to us was, we were kind of just before it came out, so all about the same time as, let's say, Collective Soul, and it was about that kind of thing, right? So this would be the third album time of Boston. Collective Soul, Shine was out at the time. You're kind of just getting in now to some of the Seattle grunge stuff is coming out. Alice in Chains, that sort of stuff. So you're riding that neck of the woods. And this is about the time we were started to play pretty regularly in the Dallas music scene. Deep Ellum is a place, pretty active music venue, so we were fairly regulars down there, right? And so but what we did was sort of wanted to integrate this idea of the spirituality sort of thing, right, into the music, without, but right, we didn't want to be striper, right, and Christian rock. Nobody wants it. The church doesn't want it because it's rock, and the world doesn't want it because it's Christian, right? And it's Christian rock is terrible. It's people who can't play, right? And people musicians in church are almost always second or third rate, and you expect it, right? Because it's like for people who can't really make it, and that's a knock that's not necessarily untrue. So people in church often very forgiving toward their artists because singing about Jesus, so they must be okay. So they're willing to put up with some nonsense or anything like that. We just threw it out there for what it was, and put our thoughts out there. And but it seemed again like it had a meaning to it, and we saw, of course, as kids do, stars in our eyes and that sort of stuff. But again, it really had a vibe to it, and so everything was going the way we thought it should. And so, and again, Jim and I became the closest of friends, closer than brothers, not like in a prison way, but we were pretty much inseparable. So drama stuff happens, and at one point there was a flood, right, and we lost all the gear, all of our music gear at the house, and we're trying to redo it and restart our lives. And Jim had some personal trauma. His girlfriend had left him, right, and some stuff, and so I had some stuff going on, right, and so I was trying to, at that time I was managing a developmental record label, and so I was trying to get into the big leagues, right, and so I'd write a first refusal on these records, and so I was trying to get into the biz, and so ultimately, right, I was told, hey, what you need to do is get a job at a real recording studio that's doing major label stuff, and then just take a crappy job there, sweeping floors. Sooner or later, up and finally got a job at Bad Animal Studio in Seattle, which was the one owned by Hart back in the day. And so got offered a job from Lawson, and so had to finish up a couple of projects and put didn't tell anybody, just like got all my shit together, finished up the project I was working on there at the studio and record label, and packed up all the stuff I could fit in my car, and went and said goodbye to my kids, right? And then I went and saw Jim, and he was super disappointed, right? But I was like, hey, so there's, I guess there was another part that I should tell, because it's I don't know, not making the story too long, but probably germane to the thing. So previous to that, Joe and Jim had felt like we should go to Seattle, right? And this was just before everything blew up in Seattle. And so there's like, hey, we should go to, like, we all felt like, yeah, we should go to Seattle and see about making this music thing go. So Joe had, he had enrolled in Walla Walla University, which is Eastern Washington, but just over the hill. And so Jim, at his first opportunity, left his job and moved up there. We're young, a lot more freedom. And so he moved up there. And they had a little 4-track recorder, and they started writing some songs. And so I was back still in Texas, and I was I was working 32 hours a week at the Tanny Corporation, writing software for them, and then I was taking like 16 hours of classes, and then I was running their studio, their recording studio there at the college, and then working weekends on the radio station. So and I had 2 little babies, 2 little kids, and so I was very, very busy. But my buddies were gone, right, and I missed them, and so they had been gone for a period of time, and I felt like, okay, I'm never going to be able to get there, and so. There was one night, and I was just so desperate, and I got up in the middle night, like 4:30 in the morning. But I remember I went and I had the little place I would just go smoke outside, so I snuck out on the back porch, and I went out there. As it's like 4:20 in the morning, 4:20. Anyway, went out there and had to have a smoke, and I'm praying as hard as I can. Dad, can you bring him back? right? I miss them so much. Can you bring them back? And I spent, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes back there and just desperate. And so I came back inside, and then on the way in, there's this like what? And there's this like light rap at the door. I go to the door, and got shit on top of it, all tied down to it. And these guys, they look wild-eyed. They're all, teeth and eyeballs, and they looked pretty wild. But they had been driving for, I don't know, three and a half days straight to get back, because they decided that they were praying, and they had decided it was time to come back. And so they were already on their way. And so, like, literally, we ended the prayer, and then the knock on the door, and I opened it up, and here they are. And so from that, and so it was like a big deal for all of us, right? And so from that moment, after that, everything sort of like locked in. And so things like went really super well. And then things happened, I guess, reasons without getting into it, but then they didn't go super well. And here's what happened like later. So then again, the call to, we all still felt like, a couple of years later, that Seattle was where we were supposed to go, blah, blah. And so some things had happened, some negative things, and again, relationships, blah, blah, that sort of thing. And so I got this gig right in Seattle, like, okay, now I can go potentially work for a major label, and this would be an opportunity for us, right? And I can go right to the belly of the beast and do this thing. So cool. So I'm like, okay, I'm headed there. So I get to Seattle, and right away, there's just pagers, right? We didn't have cell phones, but pagers, but we would respond like right away. And we'd say like, oh, we respond faster to that, the girlfriends, right? Anyway, a couple of times he didn't respond to my page for like first one, like 8 hours. And then the next time, like more than a day. And so I was very concerned about him. Like when the last time I talked to him, he was very, well, where this is going, right? So he was very quiet and kind of sullen and upset. And he was, suddenly he was like, I don't want to go to Seattle, blah, blah, and things have changed. I'm like, what's going on? So anyway, yeah. So I lost, so this happened, right? And I lost my best friend and bandmate, and with it, the sense of fate, right, and what I was supposed to do with my life, and that's where this sort of unresolved. I see that you guys are like you're my psychologist, my room psychologist here. So this is where the sort of unresolved grief, right? I think for me came from, is that there was a situation I couldn't disconnect. I couldn't unravel it, right? I couldn't pick it apart. I could grieve my friend Jim, and I still do. I miss him so often, right? And I know, like the beginning, the worst part was like the experience of like, I got to tell Jim this thing, right? And then I go, I'd relive. Suddenly, I'd like suddenly remember that he's no longer with us, and why. And every time it would happen, I would also sort of feel guilty, like I'd somehow betrayed him because I'd forgotten, right? It's tough, and it still is, right? And so obviously the enormous amount of guilt, feeling like I somehow messed things up, and if I hadn't left in a bit. But for me, again, I knew I was following Dad's lead. I knew I was, but and I can't take responsibility for Jim, and he didn't respond to me, and he obviously wasn't doing well. And ultimately, I think Joe and I would agree that I don't even think he intended for that to be the ultimate outcome, right? It was a cry for help, and it went terribly wrong. And we just didn't get answered in time, right? By the people that, or the person that he intended to answer. And it's just a really unfortunate, tragic set of circumstances that that's the way it happened, right? But I'll never not feel some level of guilt, and certainly I will always miss him. But and as Joe can attest to, when I flew back to Texas, and his parents and family did not, take it well. They come from, again, a very religious background. His dad taught, in fact, I think still teaches, or maybe just retired, teaching at a private Christian school. And his brother, believe it or not, was a Texas law enforcement, like super drug cop guy, super drug task force guy. So you can imagine what he thought of us and our sort of wild long hair hippie lifestyle. And so at that time, right, then his parents and his brother and family sort of, again, associated what they thought that meant, and our being, wild long hair musicians, with what happened to him. And so, they not only, blamed us, and I think probably to this day still do, but they did not take it well. And so there was no, and so understand that we weren't the only ones to love Jim. Like everyone who knew him, just like Jim was a rock star. And I don't know how I can describe who this guy was, right? If you look in his eyes, you'd see, I don't know, the look of Jesus, who you expect Jesus to be like. He's just I don't even know how to tell you. He's just a beautiful person, right? And always saw the good in people, no matter what. And that was some of the story. So so his parents kind of didn't tell anybody. They didn't really put an obit out or anything. And so when I flew in, Joe and I rented a PA system and put out a real obit, and then sort of got a bunch of people to do a ceremony for him in a park, right? So we played music and some of the songs that he wrote and stuff, and because he was a prolific songwriter, an amazing poet and philosopher. And again, I miss him to this day very, very much. Anyway, so but we had a little gathering there, and so I don't know, there's 150 people or something like that. I forget. It was a bunch of people, and I learned stories about Jim then that I had not been aware of. And I could tell at least 3 occasions where he literally saved my life. Because, your kids, you do stupid shit, and we were doing stupid shit all the time. And so he was able to, just like at the last minute, like reach out and catch me from falling out of a car one time, right? But he literally saved my life on more than one occasion. And I his more than one. So, because we were like that. But then I found out through, like, from Dan, another person that we knew and was in our social circle, that he saved another family of people in a snowstorm, as they really seeing the good in people despite the mud on the surface, right? I was quick to point out and be quick to see their where their angle, right, where they're trying to hose us, right? This person's untrustworthy, blah blah. So I'm quick to see where the person is flawed. And in spite of that, he wasn't unaware of it, but he was, in spite of it, he was able to have compassion for that person. And so, again, I don't know how to explain this, and I don't have any, I don't have any theological statement about this. I just will say that this is a thing that happened, is that right at the end of that, those of us who really loved him held hands and prayed and said goodbye. And the only way I can describe it is I felt his spirit come into me, right? Like that sense of being able to see the good in people. And from that moment onward, perhaps not to the degree that he did, but it absolutely indelibly changed me in that way. That spirit that he had of looking for and seeing the brokenness and the hurt in someone who that is the cause of their behavior, right? Is their woundedness. And so anyway, so that's Jim, and that's the source of my long, intractable grief, or the whole. It's not just Jim, but it was this loss of who I was. Right, like I felt like everything that I thought would happen suddenly wasn't gonna, and that. I don't know if I felt betrayed by Dad or not. It felt like there was a promise that suddenly couldn't be fulfilled, and it wasn't his fault. You know what I mean? And I didn't know how to truly work through that, and so it became a place of pain. Like I still miss Jim all the time, and especially when these songs, like, and for example, immediately I stopped playing the music, wouldn't touch it, wouldn't write any music for years, stopped playing at all, and it was later, right, that I started playing again, probably 8 or 9 years. I started playing again, but wouldn't play anything original, just covered other stuff, and still to this day haven't really touched much in the way of the original stuff, other than one little period, and we'll discuss that again in another context. But where I rehearsed another band to bring some of those songs back, and that's some of the stuff that you will sometimes hear. There's probably 5 or 6 songs that I play from time to time that was recorded during that time, and those tracks are just strictly so that we could rehearse a band while I was on the road, right? So we could all rehearse separately, but together. Hang on, I'm dry mouth here. So I'm blah blah blah. Sorry about that, ADHD. I guess I need some Adderall. And so, all right. So there's that, and depression, right? And then last couple of years, there was this period, probably 7 years ago, where right after my back surgery, had some opioid issues, right? Got addicted to opioids, caused problems. And then we were trying to downsize, and just a whole bunch of stuff happened at once. And choices were made, and some of them weren't great. And so, I take responsibility for that. And then, but other things happen too, right? Outside of our control, and then a bunch of things sort of happened all at once, which was our loss of income all of a sudden. So my wife Madeline suddenly lost her very secure job, like 18 years. She got downsized from the second or third largest legal firm in Seattle, and I was doing some tour sound stuff, and I had 2 primary artists, and one got married and moved away, and the other one kind of retired. So that now I've got a system that I'm still paying for, that I'm got enough gigs to tour and make money. Suddenly I don't, but I still have this gear. And then the other thing I was doing was teaching driver's ed, and then that all kind of fell apart. And this all happened like in 6 weeks, like our entire, bad. It was just a bad thing, right? And so we were devastated, and so then we were going to try to get out, and then more mistakes were made. It was just it was a bad period. So we ultimately, ended up nearly finding ourselves like home, like so close to basically practically homeless, right? And so, again, not complaining. I'm just saying it was really a struggle. And so then was able to get some work, and just kind of basic work, but crawl out tooth and nail, right? And get back on the feet like a little bit again, right? But it gave me compassion now for homeless people, and a whole different way of looking at things that I would have never have seen otherwise. And so grooving through that, and then just again a couple of years ago with this health thing, so suddenly I found myself again, after being perfectly healthy, right? Preternaturally healthy almost my entire life. Suddenly found myself sick in a way I couldn't stop, and I couldn't live my life. It is terrible, and couldn't find any answers to it. And I hate the modern allopathic medicine, and they don't really care. And of course, there's the whole mess with Obamacare and all the stuff that's tied with it. And you guys know just the headache that's with all of it, and it's just kind of overwhelming, right? And so, so again, all this stuff sort of put together, and then, let's say, I guess, kicking off the last set of events, uh, right at a year ago, right, everything sort of went bad, and all my gear started breaking down, and then, people that I loved, suddenly, behaved differently, and so I just I didn't I don't like drama, and I don't want I can people are going to do what they're going to do, and so I'm not in control of what they think, and so I felt like just I need to focus on my health and try to do that. So I did that, and I have been doing that, and I think I've made some progress there, right? And then just over a year ago, my sister, 5 years older, we lost her suddenly in a automobile accident, right? Single vehicle collision. So she we lost her unexpectedly, and so again, difficult and but sad loss. It happens, and so just but that it's kind of part of it. And then right at exactly a year later, so it would have been right between Christmas and New Year's, that week in between, my niece, who was so my sister's daughter, and I raised her from baby to about 5 or 6 years old, as my sister was a single mom. Well, she was going to school and working and doing a lot of stuff. As a teen, I pretty much took care of her. I pretty much raised a girl. So we were always pretty close, but again, she probably took a little too closely after some of my bad habits, and I was none too happy about that. Anyway, it's great to see you guys in chat. Anyway, I'm just sort of I guess telling stories here, right? Winding stuff up, but anyway, so my sister's widower, Rick, with whom I didn't get along with great, which was partly why I wasn't as close with my sister in the last few years. We just didn't speak as much because Rick was very he's one of those people that sort of kept people, cut them off from other people, sort of one of those people like that, right? So it was one of those situations. Anyway, but he got the word, and here's what I'm trying to get to, is so the cops called from Detroit, and apparently they had found my niece, Angela. They found her body, in a street, whatever, and she has no relationship with Detroit. Last I knew, she was living in Arizona. And so I don't know, none of us know why she was in Detroit or what happened there. And I have very difficult to kind of find out about it, because it's an awkward situation with, Rick, the brother-in-law, and so passing information there. So again, that was a shock and a surprise. And that happened right as my mom was coming out. She was scheduled for kind of a I'd say minor, sort of outpatient surgery, but I'd noticed the last couple of times that I'd seen her that she had looked, a little frailer. So both my parents are, older than in the 80s, mid 80s, and so, but everything seemed okay. And then just as she had gotten out of surgery, she this had happened, and so she wasn't doing super great, and then she just didn't bounce, and then 2 weeks later, then my mom passed away. So now it's been just a couple months now, so lost my mom. And so I just wanted to quickly pay just a a little tribute to my mom here, and just say in part, because I think this will lead to some of the other stuff. And again, I don't want to get too bogged down, but I do think it helps kind of put it in context, right? Just having gone through this experience, and sort of understanding the history of my mom, right? And of course, we had a complicated relationship, like many people do with their parents, right? It wasn't perfect, but my mom and I adored each other, right? But we also, she had her issues, and those issues then influenced me, right? And became, in some ways, my issues, right? They got passed along as they do, and so. Later, I learned that, the issues that, I had were not my fault. They were given to me. And so, I wasn't responsible for them, but I was responsible for, what I did with the knowledge. And so, thereafter, I was, yeah. I learned, to forgive my mom for the bad stuff, and to enjoy the time I had. The most difficult part was as she was fading, and she knew that she was. And of course, so most of my family all kind of lives very close together in Texas, north central Texas. And so my brother was there, and thank God for my brother. He was a rock star. He and his kids are just excellent, and my kids as well, all there. They were awesome. But my mom was beginning to go down a hill, and so they sent her hospice care, and I would talk to her on the phone, and she was apologizing to me, tearfully apologizing to me that she was fading fast, while she knew I was unable to travel to be with her. And I'm like, oh God, Mom, don't do that to me. So that was and then like right after that, I guess I should be quiet here, but then right after that, I started seeing my wife, getting signs of congestive heart failure, right? And so she had 2 widowmaker heart attacks in her late 30s, right? So that was like 20 years ago. Defibrillator and pacemaker installed, and she's got all that stuff going on, but she's got diabetes and all this other stuff going on. And then we suddenly saw, of course, they monitor real tight, right? So every 2 or 3 months we go for the full, the full deal. And suddenly kidney function started not looking great, and then started getting edema, right, which is swelling legs. And so we're starting to see the signs, and so I don't know, what's that's going to look like, but this may be a very difficult year, right? So it's like, fuck. And so again, I'm not, my point here is not to cry or whimper or anything, right? But to say that perhaps if there's have before, because I know I am, right? But one of the things is, right, I'm not even asking, for sympathy. I'm just saying that here's my tale, right? That these things are occurring on top of and in concert with all the other stuff that we see going on around us, which obviously is bad, and so the world around us is very difficult, right? So, and again, I'm not crying or even going, yeah, look, I got it so bad, because I don't. I mean, in comparison to other people, but what I can say is that pretty much everyone that I know well enough to know is going through horror stories like these that they don't know how to manage, and all of this during a time when they have us isolated, right? And where things are polarized, and obviously everyone who doesn't see things the way that the cult does is ostracized. And so the one thing I can say is absolutely so grateful for is that all of my family, so while allopathic medicine and the results may have contributed to my mom's passing, none of my family took the jabbo, for in that regard. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, but everyone is walking through. Well, look around you, right? And it seems increasingly clear that it is previously is kind of they get up close to the edge and they pull back, and they get up close to the edge and they pull back, and they don't do all that stuff. And that's the way they run that, right? And that's but these days I'm not sure that they are going to pull back. They may have just thrown all their cards on the table as they openly talk about the New World Order, and they have for quite some time, right? But they're the monetary system. They're putting it all together, right? And the thing is that here's what I want to, I guess, come back to. Where is it here? Right. So the Memento Mori, right, and this premise. I am always sad about the murder of Latin as a language, and irritated with myself that I don't know more of it, because being a quote unquote dead language, one of the things that you'll find if you take a look here real quickly is I'll do this and say so I guess I'll show you this. So Latin phrases, right, and idioms, and there are, they'll give you a list of 50 or whatever, but there were hundreds of them, right, of common Latin phrases and sayings, and these things really encapsulated, many of them, very high-minded ideals, right, and proverbs. And things like, we say things in modern English, right, in modern society, and we popularize, and it becomes idiomatic. We for television shows, and master of your own domain, right? Everybody kind of knows what that means, right? Or Nazi, right? Everybody knows what that is. If you say, it's a real e-ticket ride, people of a certain age know what that is, right? But here we have a series or a subset, a group of phrases and idioms that, again, a lot of them are, well, many of them are in some way sort of, again, idiomatic in a way that it's localized that you wouldn't understand. For example, you say, "Oh, my dogs are barking." Well, that has nothing to do with dogs or sound. You're saying my feet hurt. But if you don't know where that comes from, if you don't know what that is, right, you're not going to understand. Additionally, right, so if you know all the classics, the Greek classics, and you know of the Trojan War, and you know of all the heroes, and you know the gods, and you know all the stories, you can make reference to it. If you don't know, then you have no idea what it's talking about, right? So you've lost all of that. So these little things, I grow old through war and law. War feeds itself. I drink, therefore I am, right? Instead of I think, therefore I am, I drink, therefore I am. One of my favorites is in vino veritas, right? In wine there is truth. Many of these things become standard phrases that become useful in law, right? Quid pro quo, right? We're giving one thing for another. These phrases, right? It has meaning. And so when they killed that language and stopped teaching it to us, we lost the infusion, right, of all those phrases, which would have taught us the higher mindedness. So suddenly now you're thinking in terms of, well, if we go down to Twitter speak, the lowest minded you can possibly get. And again, if you go back to the idea of linguistic determinism, Marshall Luhan and McLuhan and many others, the idea of the language that you speak determines or certainly influences to some degree the world, the way you see and perceive the world, by the fact that you have a limited way in which you can describe it. And so the words that are given you to describe it help you see it in a certain way. In fact, the fewer words, if you're given fewer words, you are not thinking too much. And this idea also was expressed pretty well in Orwell's 1984 as they were removing the words. So, first of all, just this whole idea, if you want to have a lovely Saturday afternoon, just sit down and go through and start learning Latin phrases, and you will find within those, just the phrases, some fascinating ideas in and of themselves. And one of these is the idea of memento mori, which is now fairly common, right? But this idea that you too will die, right? To remember that you are also mortal. And it is, again, even this thought process is so far divorced now from our modern Western view that we do everything we can to sanitize and to not see, even on YouTube. You got to scrub, even with the current conflict going on. You got to scrub and blur those pictures, all right, so that you don't get demonetized or deplatformed. Because God forbid, right, that you see any of that or see the outcome or the result of what's going on. And the truth is that in many ways, despite our every effort to pretend that we will not die, it is the fact that we die that gives life meaning, that it is limited. Quote Neil Peart of Rush here is, can any part of life be larger than life? Even love must be limited by time. And those who push us down, that they might climb. Like a steely blade in a silken sheath, we don't see what they're made of. They shout about love, but when push comes to shove, they live for things they're afraid of. And the knowledge that they fear is a weapon to be used against them. So, he got it. But of course, as do they all, right? They're telling us as they are wont to do. But that again, that information being out there, nevertheless, if we keep in mind, right, that we are mortal, and as such, we are subject, right, to of course, the fates of the stars, right? It is not our the problem lies not in our stars, but in ourselves, right? So we can quote all this stuff, but when we come back to it, one of the biggest things that we lost, that they had during that period of time, right, is at least an awareness that there is some scrutiny of our behavior by those outside ourselves, that there is, in fact, some meaning to the need for having and possessing character and ethics, that karma, right, truly is a thing, that there is comeuppance, even when you do not see it, it is somehow there. And so how do we tell ourselves, or how do we convince ourselves that that is true? It's a difficult proposition to see, those we despise, and because they are despicable. How do we then sleep at night, knowing that they do these terrible things, right? And all this, conspiracy theory stuff, and of course, when you get into the really deep, dark stuff, and certainly you understand that if people, get that first, right? If that's the first thing that they hear is, adrenochrome and that whole, sex magic and all that occurs there with the Moloch and all that sort of stuff. They'll go running and they'll think that you're kooky, and it's like, but the thing is that, I didn't invent any of that stuff. I didn't make it up. It's not my idea, right? I'm just looking for what they do, and this is what they're doing. It's not my. I didn't. It's not my idea. And so, you sort of again have to at some point. Again, here's I guess what I want to get to, right? Because I think it's important, and I think in a way this picks up where I left off these many moons ago when I stopped joining with you in streams before, right? Is that there are any number of rabbit holes that we can crawl down, and damn near every one of them will, to some degree, confirm and affirm just what we know to be true, right? That to whatever degree we can understand it, there are entities who hate mankind, who want to see us perish, and part of that is that they coordinate and corroborate with collaborators, right? Who accept fame, fortune, whatever it is they want, in exchange for doing the bidding of these other things. And again, from my perspective, since they're all liars, even those people who we would consider at the top of the highest people in the human pyramid are themselves deceived. And I think it's important to note that the eye is always separate, right, from the rest of the pyramid. It's always separate. It's not the same. It's a separate entity. So I think that those who are in service of and beholden to those entities which give them additional power, right, and provide them with those things, I think they are themselves deceived. And so while they might get what they want, right, now what does it profit a man if he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And I believe that they will, right? And so, and again, from my perspective, and this is again partially just experiential, which I counts for what it counts for. It's my experience, and so I can't convince you of it, nor should you accept it as being the truth, because it's my I have no reason to lie to you, but nevertheless. It's my experience. But then other evidence, and I can share the evidence that I have that helps me affirm that. But again, largely what I have come to accept as being pretty accurate is a combination of, evidence from a variety of sources and experience. But it's the experience that I can't convince anybody of, and I think that's what makes the biggest difference. But it is that, and I'm kind of wrapping it all up to get to here, which is spending that time with your to get to know the Creator, right? That's the is that if we are all these rabbit holes we can go down, it's certainly enlightening, and it does absolutely. Each of them indicate that we are being deceived and lied to at every step of the way, and pretty much, as we say back and forth ad infinitum, that pretty much every rabbit hole you look down is evidence. You will find evidence that we are being misled, and that everything that they pretty much have ever taught us is a lie, if not a misdescription. There's nothing that they told us that's straight. Very little of it is exactly upside down. Or inverted, because it's just kind of, I guess that would be too easy to undo it. But for the most part, the encryption makes it, bitter for sweet, dark for light, good for evil. All the things that we're told they would bring to us. And so, if, as is the case, and here's what I again return to, if this is as we understand it, truly. A battle, a supernatural battle for our soul, then it appears from where I sit, and again I don't count more than anybody else, other than I suppose what I have to throw in is I got some time invested, so for whatever that counts. But from my perspective, it does appear that we are at least as close as I've ever seen. All the signs point to this being the closest. And again, they've been pushing and pulling for, forever, it seems. But but there are things that look like it's in the mix right now that does appear that they have just sort of left the lights on and they're just running. That they're being sloppy and they're just going for the end, and hell or high water. They've set their number and they're going, and they feel like they can't be stopped. And it's sort of, I mean, to a degree that may be true, because that's what the book I read says, is that they will get kind of what they want, but they won't, ultimately get what they really, want. They yeah, it is. But yeah, it will look like they win in a lot of regards, and we'll have to talk, I think, again more about that later, because that comes at a substantial cost to those of us who do not consent. What happens then if you do not consent and they insist upon it? Well, either you choose to give in and consent and justify it to yourself, or you do not, and then they've threatened, and it seems in all likelihood that they are not unwilling to recycle you and tell you that they're doing you a favor. It's a kindness to send you into the light so you can get recycled and try again. Maybe next time you won't be so stupid. But if you can't accept the elevation and evolution of mankind by accepting these things, then we're just going to move you on, and that will be your, apparently, right, your choice. And so you have to make that decision for yourself ahead of time, and what that means to you. Again, for me, I say, if you have nothing worth dying for, then you really have nothing worth living for. And I have my reasons, right? So I accept it, and, again, don't threaten me with a good time. Got that going. But it's not up to me to tell anybody else how to do that or why, right? So, but it does appear, especially for those who are, for example, in the Christian community, who are looking for a rapture or some way out, some salvation, that they think that's what salvation looks like. Keep in mind that for the Jews of Jesus' day, they understood Jesus as the king of their king, that he was going to lead them into freedom from the Romans. And obviously that's very much not what he had in mind. And they were so focused on the political aspects of maintaining control in this realm that they were unable to see what he actually meant, and they were unable to see the spiritual realm. They were unable to see the truth, and they didn't recognize him for who he was, right? And so it appears, and again, I'll cover this at a later thing, and we'll go through that. That's not really. I really do probably want to wrap this up so it's not too overtly long and just belabored. But I think that for anyone who is expecting an easy way out, or that you will be free from the consequences, I wish you the best. Again, I don't want to go, you're wrong. I just it doesn't look that way to me. And in fact, it looks like there are so many warnings and statements that say very specifically that the beast is given power over God's people, right, to wage war against them and to martyr them. And it looks like, a lot. I mean, it says that pretty much everybody will have to do it. So, look very closely at the Daniel and, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and the the image there and all that stuff, and the fiery furnace, and looks like a good metaphor. Maybe it's a good one to revisit. I just my heart goes out to those who think that they're going to be magically saved. And people, they want to mock them with the, nobody's coming to save you and you're going to save yourself. I don't see it really necessarily that way either. But I mean, again, I don't necessarily agree with anybody or even myself. I don't know how but what I see is that, we're just basically going to have to go, no, F you. I do not consent, right? And it is really that they ultimately, right, they need you to choose to say yes, right? And that's when they got you. So you just say no. And all they can do, if they have to take you out, they're willing to do that. But they really lose if they do that, because you actually count for Dad's side when that happens. Again, I can get more into that later, but either way, right? It says that blessed are those who die at this time, because they're done. They can rest. Right? Yay! Why not? Right? Why push to? And again, I'm not saying you should just like run into the street. That's not what I'm saying. But I saw a great story this week. Right, the Native American tale about there was a fire in the story. I'm not going to tell the whole long version, but I'll try to keep it relatively short. But it's unlike me, but I'll try. There was a forest fire, and so a panther was running away from the fire, and then he saw a hummingbird, and the hummingbird was went past him, and then hummingbird went and looked up, and it went back the other way, right back into the fire. He's like, what's going on? And so he's running, and then he sees hummingbird zips past him, and then right back to the fire, back and forth, and he's so fast, right? He's like, what's going on? But every time he sees him, the hummingbird is got covered in smoke and grit and grime, and his feathers becoming singed. And so finally, he's like, "Whoa, friend! Hey, whoa!" He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? What's all this happening here? Fire's that way, and safety's that way. Let's go." And he's like, "Well, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I go to the lake and get up some water, and then I take it over to the fire and throw it on the fire." He's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, go to the lake and get some water and suck it up and go over to the fire and drop it on the fire." He's like, "You're a hummingbird, right? What are you? You're not going to put out the fire. What's wrong with you?" you have no hope of putting out the fire. And he's like, "Well, obviously, clearly that's preposterous, right? Of course I can't put out the fire, but the forest is my home, and I got to do my part, right? So I do my part, and that's what I do, right? I got to do my part, and then of course the spirit of the forest heard this and responded by bringing in a thunderstorm to put out the fire. A nice Native American tale and a version, a very similar way of saying what I've been trying to say for some time, which is that saving the world, it's a great thing, and I wanted to do it when I was younger, but as you get older, you get tired, and but you realize it's a difficult proposition, right? Saving the world is probably not going to happen. It's hard to do, save the world. But lest you be discouraged, right? But what you can do is rather than changing the world, maybe you can just change the world around you, right? And I've considered this on more than one occasion that Jabro, right, didn't say to love everybody, right? So like people give me the philosophical thing, you have to love Hitler, right, or Stalin, or like, well, I don't know them, right? And he didn't say love everybody, right? What he said is love your neighbor, and like if I was put in a position that they're my neighbor, then we'll talk about that. But until then, I don't interact with them, right? So what I'm responsible for is me, and then he asked me to love my neighbor, and so I commit to do that as best I'm able, and I don't always do well at it, and I'm working on that, right? Because I want to represent Dad and his love well. It's the most remarkable and extravagantly beautiful thing I've ever seen, which is the love that is and the embodiment of which is our Creator. And all the evidence that I have of it is that. And so every philosophical question that should arise about how is it possible that a loving God could let babies die, or AIDS or whatever you want to put in there, is that I don't know, because I don't have all the information, so I can't make a truly informed judgment call on that. Like from what I see, certainly certain things look more fair than others, and certain things look unfair. And I would love to see some comeuppance, and it feels like we certainly want justice. But we'll see what I've come to know also is that without knowing all the things, you lack key evidence, right? And so you can't really know a thing. But the Creator can and does. And what I've learned is that the Creator is in every way trustworthy and good. So I don't have to necessarily understand the situation or even be okay with it, or I don't even have to worry about it. I trust Him, right? And so there's a line in Job that I just love, right, which is, though He slay me, yet I will trust in Him. And I so embrace that, because I've learned that in my experience, He's absolutely in every way good, and there's no shadow of darkness whatsoever. And so no matter what happens, and even if it is unfortunate or uncomfortable or even tragic to me, it's okay, because I trust Him, right? And so, and He said that, right, and I believe Him, that all things work out for good for those who love Him, and I do, and I can't wait to be in His presence full time. And so, bring that shit on, right? I'm ready for that. But I know everybody is, right? And as much as I'd like to do it now, I don't. I gotta wait, apparently, so damn it. But here's all right, so I guess here's the next parts. I said it wasn't clickbait, that you are right now, it's 1:03 a.m. And so, basically I'm screwed, or, we'll see what Dad does, because I've been waiting forever, and so I don't, who knows. So I said I'd do this. Part of all the health stuff that's been going on, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, but it's also been one of the things that there's been a variety of reasons, but one of the things that makes me not too excited about doing anything on camera, right, or live events, is because my dental situation has become so bad and so just horrifying, to the place that pretty much I've lost pretty much functionally all the teeth, really. And of course it's it's obviously, it's embarrassing, it's shameful, and it's painful, and but it's also, trying to deal with it is expensive. And so a number of years ago, where I realized it was kind of going that way and they were beginning to break and things were happening, so I looked into the best available treatment being implants, and so I looked at that, and they gave me a number, and so I said, okay, well, that's expensive, but insurance doesn't cover that, obviously, and so we were and have been trying to dig out of stuff for a while, trying to be frugal. So anyway, just put back and saved and scrimped and saved, and did what we could to kind of set that aside. And so finally, and I've been really terrified about the whole thing, because there's a lot of stuff. But finally, got down to it and made things take forever now. So back in end of the year, finally made the appointments. Found a periodontist, right, who does the removal of the extraction of all the remaining bits and pieces of the teeth, and then puts in the implants, the 2 implants that are going to be on the bottom, and then the top is going to be, a denture piece. But then, when we got all the stuff and we talked about it and I did all this stuff, he gave, told me the price, and I was like, we're right in that ballpark. And I'm like, yeah, cool. And he's like, all right, now who's going to do the, the denture stuff? And I'm like, say what? And, he's like, yeah, well, I do this. I do the periodontist stuff, but the implants, but I don't do the. I'm like, wait, what? And so then I had to go and find, and I did. I found another guy that's good to do the denture work. But what I realized, then, and this is a number of weeks ago, kind of when this kind of transpired, realized that now I'm well short of what I thought that I needed. And everything we've been, doing is cash and all that sort of stuff. So I'm trying not to go into debt for anything and all that sort of goodies. So we have set up a number of things, and so pivoted pretty quickly and trying now to sell some things. My wife has some textiles and fabrics and some natural hair wigs that we're looking to sell. So trying to get that, and I've got some audio gear and some technology that's looking to try to get some stuff out of as well. And I have been just hanging on forever, holding on for dear life, and holding on for Dad. And I do not, and have not, this is the whole time that I've been doing this, not asked for money from people, because I just never felt comfortable with that. I did monetize the channel because they offered it, and I only put that up for the unintended consequences stuff. I didn't put it for any of the explicitly, the scriptural stuff. I just didn't feel right, so I didn't monetize all that stuff anyway. I didn't really care. It wasn't about the money. I never really made more than, I don't know, $50 a month or so. I don't know, not very much. So it never really was about the money. And I never merged up or anything. And I did ask for money for other people and passed it along until I felt like that didn't. That love was kind of sour there at the end, let's put it that way. And so, the only thing that's like at the very beginning, I offered if people wanted to help with the PC buy-in, and people were helpful with that. And so I'm still uncomfortable with the idea of, asking people for help or anything. And so did not want to set up like a GoFundMe or anything. And now I got to tell you, it's 1:08 a.m. I am appearing at the dentist tomorrow in faith. Right, I got what, 7 hours, 6 hours, something like that, and I'm still about $5,000 short. I've just been praying about it, and so what I figured I'd just do is just ask people, hey, look, you know what, I'm not even asking for a donation, but if you would, what I can do is just, again, try to put together all the cash, and we were trying not to go into debt, but I would rather, if I had to do it, go with people and say, hey, if you would loan me whatever you have, $5, $20, or whatever else, pay you straight 10% on that. So if you loan me $10, I'll pay you $11. And give you an instrument of a payment for within a year. Right? Do that. Again, we have enough things up for sale that we should we have enough value. We can do that. It's the faster you try to sell it, right, the less you get for it. So anyway, we're just we're a few thousand off, and trying real hard, and so I'm not asking necessarily for donations. If you want to do that, super great. But I'm not really asking for that. But I've been trying to avoid in any way this whole time, and so I guess I procrastinated until the last minute. But I finally just kind of went, hey. So tomorrow, provided that I can somehow put the rest of it together in some way, if there's a miracle, then they will take out all the remaining teeth, and then There forward, I will never. So when I say I won't talk the same, I will. From that point on, I'll have to learn to talk again because everything will be not original material, and so where you position your tongue and all of the stuff that you do to enunciate and elucidate, I'll have to start all over. And so it may be a minute before I can get back, but hopefully quickly, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it won't happen, but I guess what I'm asking is just praying and go, hey, if you only have prayers, just pray that there's like a miracle, whatever. We went to the mailbox and stuff, hoping like last minute, right? Often that happens. Sometimes the last minute, right, is that the miracle shows up that way. But it's just, ultimately. And so I was going to do it even, earlier. And then, I wanted to make sure everything worked. I haven't broadcast for a while, so I just needed to make sure everything worked. And, so it was going to be 12 hours, and now it's, 7 hours. So I'm not really expecting much, but anyway, so I didn't even put up a GoFundMe because it takes more time to go through that way. Like, it would, I think, 48 hours before I can even make all the stuff like ping and go that way. So in the description is, of course, PayPal and Venmo. I feel super bad. I feel like it's a grift. Like people are going to accuse me of grift or whatever, and it's not that. I'm just sort of desperately trying to figure out how to make these commitments when I'm just trying to trust, right? And again, I'm willing to pay with interest, right? So pay it back, again, with straight up 10% interest. So you can, if you put something to PayPal, just tell me if you want to, if it's a loan, right? And I'll and your email address, and I'll just send you an instrument and sign it and say I owe you within a year. And I'll pay, probably just be a couple months because it won't take that long, especially if you're only donating $5 or whatever. It's not going to be difficult, but it's anyway, try to do that. So I'm praying for help. I haven't been able to even read the chat. I feel awkward and bad, like somebody's gonna feel like I'm using you or whatever. I just like that was not the intent. It's like I don't know what else to do. Like just trying to make away. So anyway, I thought I would share just like songs, because like these are the songs. So I did these things before because again I don't again if it works out tomorrow I'll be talking different, right? So anyway, the first thing when I came in here, I sat down and saw this. And I was like, cool. So I put in Psalm 14, and then Dad put in 41. So I'm like, okay, I didn't even know what it was, but then I did, and I was like, okay, that's fine. So I'm going to have to do them both because just because, right, it's me versus him, I suppose, because I put in 14 because I know that I love this one. And so it just seemed appropriate, right? So Psalm 14, only the fools say in their heart, right, that they're, where is this? Only fools say in their hearts that there is no God. They're corrupt, all their actions are evil, not one of them does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on the entire human race. He looks to see if anybody is truly wise, if anybody seeks God. But no, all have turned away, and all have become corrupt. No one does good, not a single one. Will those who do evil never learn? They eat up my people like bread, and wouldn't think of praying to the Lord. Terror will grip them, for God is with those who obey him. The wicked frustrate the plans of the oppressed, but the Lord will protect his people. Who will come from Mount Zion to rescue Israel? When the Lord restores his people, Jacob will shout with joy, and Israel will rejoice. And I always love that one. All right, so then he popped this one on me, and I started laughing because he flipped the numbers around. You're gonna laugh when we get there if you don't already know it. All right, 41. All right, so you'll laugh now because watch. All right, for the choir director. Oh, the joys of those who are kind to the poor. The Lord rescues them when they're in trouble. The Lord protects them and keeps them alive. He gives them prosperity in the land and rescues them from their enemies. The Lord nurses them when they're sick and restores them to health. O Lord, I prayed, have mercy on me. Heal me, for I have sinned against you. But my enemies say nothing but evil about me. How soon will he die and be forgotten, they ask. They visit me as if they were my friends, but all the while they gather gossip, and when they leave, they spread it everywhere. All who hate me whisper about me, imagining the worst. He has some fatal disease, they say. He'll never get out of that bed. Even my best friend, the one I trusted completely, the one who shared my food, has turned against me. Lord, have mercy on me. Make me well again so I can pay them back. I know you're pleased with me, for you've not let my enemies triumph over me. You've preserved my life because I am innocent, and you've brought me into your presence forever. Praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who lives from everlasting to everlasting. Amen and amen. And again, I thought that was funny, and I promise I didn't pick that one because it's just funny. But it is, again, it is a hope that we have in Him, and one of the things that I will say is just in that moment, I really loved and missed. I missed being with you guys and missed sharing the beauty of Scripture. And so, if it's cool with you, I'll do Psalm 19 here, in part because it's one of my favorites, and in part because we all crack up. I'll say all of us, those of us who try to discern truth from lies, right, and figure it in the oddest places, And so, anyway, I'm going to, if you're cool with it too, I so enjoyed the little Ringy-Dingy, using the singing bowl and some of the tuning forks. That if you'll indulge me, I'll just kind of do that on the way out, right, as well. So then, you can include that. So anyway, if you want to, maybe I'll clip my little, I'm so poor, I gotta, eat worms or whatever, but I need to, I don't know, I think the number was like 6180 or some shit, that I was still like short, and it is now 1:18 a.m. and I'm supposed to be there at 8 o'clock. Hey, the upshot is I got to take 2 Halcyon when I get there. So we'll see how that goes. There is a possibility if I can, I don't know, run around. Most financial institutions don't open that early, right? So even if I were to try to get into a bank and do like credit card advances and that sort of stuff, that's not going to work. Some ATMs might do it, but most of them won't do credit card advances, or they'll really hit you hard with credit. So there's, we're still trying to figure it out, but we're coming up against a wall, and I tried to not ask anybody, and then 2 things, right? 3, I guess. 1, I missed you guys, so here I am. Explain, kind of what's going on. And 2, for posterity's sake, I suppose, because I realize, again, I'll never, in a weird way, I'll never sound the same way again, and that's it's kind of a weird thing to me. I used to work, in radio and did voice production, right, and a lot of theater and that sort of thing. So spent a lot of time doing presentations, all that sort of stuff, and became rather used to it. And so, knowing that you're going to go into it and then it will be different, afterwards. It's like, I sort of think about the, what's his bucket from Top Gun Maverick with the Iceman with the throat thing going. Oh, I guess it's not not quite that bad. All right, so here we go. Hit you with some Psalm 19, and then hang out as long as you like, and then I'll do a little ringy-dingy. I might even do some more noodling on the way out. That was fun. I haven't touched that in, I don't know, a year and a half or whatever since either. And that was a fun reintroduction to the instrument, and very cathartic for me. So if you want to hang out for that as well, I'll do that, and it'll make the stream very long and boring. So I'll have to, clip out the part where I'm going, help me, so I can repost that on Facebook, so people can laugh at me. All right, so love you guys. Thanks for being here and spending time with me. And again, I'm sorry I wasn't able to read the chat. Largely, it's because my eyes are so bad and the chat is so small that I can't really see it. I mean, I can see there are people there, and I can see that they're talking, but I don't know what. I can't read it. It's too far away. What's that? Oh, is that supposed to be something? I think I had a little thing here that was just supposed to be. Was that supposed to happen? Something like that for this. And then I love you guys. I miss you so much. That's one thing that you want stickers. Oh well, send me email. Unintended consequences3@gmail.com. I think it's in the notes, the show notes. Unintended.consequences3@gmail.com. Send me your address, and I will send you stickers. Not stickers like plants that will hurt or anything, but no, stickers like bumper sticker type stickers. You know what? Maybe what I'll try to do is I'll try to put this tab in the bigger. Whoa. Does that work? Put that in the bigger window here, and so I can see the chat a little bit better. But I will then go here and do this. All right. So the idea here is I don't know. Just gonna give you something nutty to hang out with. All right. I'm gonna give you a little ringy-dingy because a couple of I missed that too, and a couple of things occurred while I was doing it earlier. Is that again it felt like it was helpful both for me and potentially for you too. Again, maybe I'm just all woo or wacky. Shit, I don't know. Maybe both. Fuck, I don't know. But I enjoyed it, and hopefully you will enjoy it too. So I'll put a little ringy-dingy on there. Then I'm going to do a little noodle on the way out, and then I will say good night. What? It has been a while. What? Stream has gone a while. Huh? Okay, so anyway, I guess I got to do this to do that. So, yeah.